Ryan Lawrence wrote a great piece about it over at phillyvoice.com. He asked the question, why do Philly fans trust the Sixers process but have little faith in the Phillies rebuild? And he joins us now to discuss that, which he did a lot of research for from people, media, all over the Delaware Valley, where, Ryan, I guess the Sixers process, which is now entering year number 5, I guess, from 2013 when it all kind of began. And the Phillies are now in 6 years of pretty bad baseball. So why is there a difference in the fan base?
Well, 6 years of pretty bad baseball, but you do have to remember that they didn't actually sign off on committing to a rebuild until after the 2014 season. So this is actually only the third season they've broke it down and tried to build it back up. I know they weren't a very good team in 2013 and 14, but they hadn't committed yet. So the process did begin a little later than the Sixers. That said, well, first off, the timing of my story wasn't great, and the reason I say that is because we're in the middle of one of the worst periods of Phillies baseball, and they were just dreadful in May. And the Sixers, meanwhile, are ready to draft. So it's like, we have excitement on one, because you could see that we're going to get somebody and whatever. And then the other flip side of it is you have to watch baseball every day, and it's been bad baseball. So I forget your initial question, but so part of it is that with baseball, it's every day, and you can't really have an escape for it. There's no NFL going on. There's no college basketball. There's nothing else to distract you, where during the NBA season, there's plenty of stuff going on that you don't have to watch the Sixers every day, because also they don't play every day. And then the other part of it is just in the NBA and the way basketball works as opposed to baseball, there's that instant gratification that if you're terrible, that right at the end of the season, pretty much, you're going to get a guy that you could plug in to your lineup or your starter or somewhere in your rotation the very next year. Where with baseball, you get a guy and you might not see him for 5 or 6 years, and he's going to wear 5 or 6 different minor league uniforms, and you hope he can make it through the minor league system. So there's a lot of layers to it. But it is interesting because I think there's smart fans that understand that you need to be patient with the Phillies, and you can't judge them based on the major league roster. You have to look at the minor leagues, and you have to look at some more of their prospects are doing and how they're that's how anybody should grade the Phillies. It's not just their win-loss record in the major leagues. You have to look at the progress of guys like Rhys Hoskins and J.P. Crawford and Scott Kingery and so on and so on.
Right. Now, I think one of the things that you kind of point out, you've covered the Phillies. You've also covered the Sixers at one point, but that was a while ago. They were way post, before this all happened. But
yeah, one of the first things I covered was them trading Iverson. So, yeah, that was a while ago.
So in your time covering the Phillies, I can't imagine there's been people who outwardly say, I want the Phillies to lose. I want them to stink, or I want them – because the light at the end of the tunnel isn't nearly as a known quantity. So I find that baseball fans don't have that same desire of accepting of losing because of the, as you kind of alluded to, the lack of gratification or when that gratification will come, or even the belief that gratification will ever pan out because baseball players take so long typically to get through a system.
And it's just much harder to predict. I mean, when you're drafting a kid like Moniak, for example, high school kid out of Southern California, you don't know what he's going to be in 5 years. You hope that he could be, something great. But, meanwhile, in the basketball draft, you draft a kid out of University of Kentucky, say, who's playing elite level of competition, for a period of time. It's a little bit easier to project that. So sure, like in baseball, I think, again, some smart fans do see the big picture. They do see that it's going to be a process, but baseball is also a sport where you do live and die with it more during the course of the summer. It's a nice distraction from life. And when it's bad baseball, it's hard to watch, and it gets people down. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot. Again, there's a lot to it. There was another thought rattling in my head that maybe I'll get back to it when you ask me another question. But it's there, like I said, there's just a lot to it, and it's hard. It's baseball's more of an inexact science, I guess you could say, when you're rebuilding. Oh, I know the thought I was going to say. Not to continue to ramble on, but the one thing that you also have to understand with baseball, next to basketball, is that they have an unlimited salary cap. So a lot of people want the Phillies to spend. But as we saw with the previous administration, that's not always the best thing. You got to have the timing, when to spend. And I think the Phillies are doing it right. So, their payroll isn't near what it was a couple years ago when they were, for a period of time, they were one of the top 3 payrolls in baseball for, I think, a 4 or 5 year period. What they're doing is they're doing it strategically now, and they're waiting for all these prospects. When these guys are ready, when Kingery's here and Hoskins is here and Crawford is here and Alfaro is here, then they're going to hit the free agent market, and they're going to go after guys like Machado and Harper. But you don't want wasted salaries on your books. It's kind of like having Papelbon on your roster a couple years ago. It was a complete waste. Why are you spending $13 million on a closer? You don't need a closer if you're not a contending team. So you have to be smart with spending money.
Ryan Lawrence, PhillyVoice.com. Check out this article on why the Philly fans are the way they are, especially. So does it surprise you, or is it a smart way of thinking, the Sixers' way of doing things and the fans that have accepted that?
I mean, I wouldn't. I think it's the way to do it. I'm a little, I guess, surprised that it's so accepted, and I think there is a big gap in between an age group. I think that you're going to have younger fans that are more accepting of trying something radical like Sam Hinkie did. But no, I'm not dumb. I understand in basketball, if you're one of these teams that's the 7th or 8th team in the conference to make the playoffs, you're stuck in no man's land. You're going to be bounced out of the playoffs probably in the first round, maybe in the second round if you get lucky, and you're not going to get that impact player because you're drafting too low. So I do understand basketball is a superstar league more than any other sport, that if you have one guy, 2 guys, it could turn your franchise around with a snap of a finger. Where, I mean, football is a little similar if you get an impact quarterback, but no, basketball is really the only sport that really is a legit superstar sport, and you're not going to get that superstar unless you're drafting, usually in the top 5. Although Golden State would be an exception, as Howard Eskin mentioned in my story. That is the thought, but it's not always. It hasn't always been the reality. If you look at the teams that win, and even Cleveland, they got LeBron back. So they drafted LeBron, but they didn't win a championship with LeBron the first time. So yeah, I mean, it's not foolproof. It's not like you automatically get a superstar in the top 3 picks and you're automatically guaranteed to get a championship. But it is better than being a team in no man's land, like the Sixers were for a while during the whole pretty much Iguodala, Kyle Korver era. They're just stuck in no man's land.
Ryan Lawrence with us, PhillyVoice.com, and great article on there about why is it a lot of folks in Philadelphia seem more confident in the Sixers process than in the Phillies rebuild. And Ryan, you alluded to the fact that you solicited a bunch of opinions from people who are sports writers and sports broadcasters, and then people that have blogs and different things. What were some of the points that they brought up that maybe had your eyebrow raised that you didn't think of or consider, including the one that I just came across while scanning the article, that the fan bases and the age of the fan bases are different?
Yeah, I kind of alluded to that a minute ago, in that it seems like the fans that are really on board with the quote-unquote process, the Sixers, are younger. I mean, I think that, the majority of these people are probably under 35, and whereas a lot of baseball fans are older. And that's just, it's sort of, I bet if you looked at ticket sales and TV ratings and you were able to break down the age brackets, I think it would be very similar in who watches the Sixers versus who watches the Phillies too. So yeah, that's surely a part of it. But yeah, when I solicited, different, I think I got 7 different people in Philadelphia media. The one thing I did is I wanted to talk to people that weren't sports specific, because I'm sports specific. I'm obviously a Phillies beat writer. So, I have a little bit of a slanted view of it because I'm living and dying with the Phillies because that's my job. So yeah, I wanted to talk to people that see all the teams and, pretty much watch them all with an even amount of time. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if anything surprised me. I think a lot of us had pretty much the same take, which is that, in basketball, it's just much easier to grasp on that hope because it comes that much sooner. Where with baseball, it's once in a generation that a Griffey or a Bryce Harper comes through. The majority of the time, the top, even the first round, is so inexact that, even if you have the number 1 pick, you're not guaranteed to get a difference maker. And Pat Burrell was the number 1 pick overall. And, very nice player, did win a couple World Series rings, but he was a role player on those teams. And I'm not saying he was a failure by any stretch. But yeah, I'm just saying that, Pat Burrell isn't LeBron James either. So yeah, I mean, and there have been plenty of other number 1 picks that weren't anywhere near as successful as Pat Burrell. So yeah, I mean, I think the main takeaway from all of us was it was just that. It's just so much easier to kind of pin your hopes on the Sixers and to accept losing because you can see the light at the tunnel a lot quicker. And another point that some people made was the Sixers have actually produced a legit superstar in Joel Embiid, where the Phillies haven't produced anybody that, is of the same caliber. Although I will say to that, I don't know that Joel Embiid is a legit superstar guy that you can build a championship team around. I mean, for a month he looked really good, but I believe he was drafted 3 years ago and sat out 2 with an injury, and then missed the last 2 months of this season with an injury. That's concerning. I mean, when you're talking a big guys, 7-foot guys that have foot and leg problems,
yeah,
it's very concerning. So I think that's they oversell that point a little bit. I like Joel Embiid. He's a great personality. He's a great talent when he's on the court. But that's the if there when he's on the court.
I definitely think that is a big disconnect in both sides of this. The people who are kind of anti-process, if you will, always kind of point to the injuries. The people who like what's going on say, well, if these guys are healthy. But if is everything. Anybody can get hurt at any time possible, right? I mean, so, yeah, if you want to be negative and say if he's always hurt. But I get what your point is. My question really is, for you, Ryan, the Phillies, the Sixers kind of outwardly admitted this. Do you think if the Phillies, in a timely fashion, said, look, we're going through a rebuild, we're going to be young for a couple of years, come along with us, do you think it would be better received? Or because baseball is still way different than basketball, that probably not? Because I agree. The fact that the Sixers came right out and said, hey, together we'll build. We're going to stink. And people were like, okay. I was a little surprised at first that people were accepting of that. And then the Phillies, they try to hold on to the 2008 team a little too long. But if they would have, in a timely fashion, said, look, we're going to start getting rid of some of these guys and we're going to start over, do you think the fans would be more accepting if they did it maybe a little earlier?
Well, 2 points on that. And the first is that the Phillies did win a championship in 2008. So last time I checked, that is the ultimate goal for any team in any sport.
Yeah.
So in a way, I feel like maybe they should be given a little bit more leeway because they did accomplish the ultimate thing within the last 10 years. It wasn't that long ago. And if you want to fault them for holding on to that, I get it, but they had something good. You know, it's hard for anybody. If you were sitting in their chair and making a lot of money and seeing fans come through the turnstiles and knowing that the World Series was only a couple years ago, and it's a little tougher to make those decisions. So I will say that. And then the other thing, I'm sorry, my mind is like all over the place today, but I can't remember the other point I was trying to make, but what was the other question? What was your question? Could you pose it to me again?
That the fact if the Phillies would have basically
right,
announced,
right.
Not so much say, hey, we're losing on purpose
We're
or
rebuilding.
but if they basically started the rebuild earlier, like you kind of said, well, they didn't really start the rebuild till 2 years ago. They had a couple of, but they were bad. They were bad in 13.
No, they were. And yeah, so if they would have held on for 2 more years rather than 4 more years, so I mean, okay, so they had a 500 record in 2012.
Right.
So to go back in 2013 and think you could turn it around, I don't really have a huge problem with that. They were kind of in limbo there. They weren't awful in 2012. So it really could have gone either way. But yeah, maybe they started a year late. I think that would be a fair analysis of it if you just want to be very objective and not look at it from a jaded fan's perspective, that they probably waited 1 year too late. But even then, I mean, Gillick did come out and say, because Gillick was the team president temporarily for a time there when they began the rebuild officially after the 2014 season, and he stressed patience, and he said this is going to take some time. And, maybe because Gillick isn't the personality or the, I don't know, whatever that quality that Hinkie had that people rallied around, maybe the message didn't get out there as clearly, and because it wasn't as drastic, because I mean, again, the Sixers were doing something that was pretty much different than anybody had ever embarked on, or at least publicly embarked on, and were so out and out about it. Where the Phillies were doing wasn't anything different than what the Cubs did or what the Astros did or what a lot of baseball teams do when they rebuild. So since it wasn't anything drastically different, I think it was a little harder for fans to jump on board and say, oh, this is cool, this is different, this is great. So I get it, but I get what you're saying. Like maybe if they were, maybe when Matt Klentak's on TV, maybe he should bring that up. That look, I know the Major League product is hard to watch. I'm just as frustrated as you are, Phillies fans. But I am encouraged by what's going on in Reading. I am encouraged by what's going on at Lehigh Valley, and I think we can't lose sight of that. And we also have to kind of stay true to what our goal is, and the end goal is to have a consistent winner for a long time. So I'm not happy with not winning, but I have to look at this from a big picture standpoint because there really isn't any quick fixes. You're not going to bring in a guy in baseball for sure. You're not going to bring in one or two guys that's going to turn it around right away. You need a core of guys, and that's what they're doing with the minor leagues.
Ryan Lawrence with us, PhillyVoice.com, and great feedback on the Sixers process versus the Phillies process and whether that rebuild worked. How much do you think that Mike alluded to it too? Would it have been better if they came out? Is it like the Eagles where in the NFL you never want to use that rebuild word? Do you think the Phillies never really wanted to use that or publicize that much, or does that have a comparison or not?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, they probably. I don't think that they're, hiding the fact that that's what they're doing. I think that they've made it very public that they're breaking it down and building it back up and trying to build through a productive farm system. But yeah, I mean, you don't want to stress it too much because Well, I guess what I'm saying is they're not trying to lose the major league level. They're not out and out trying to lose. They're just taking their lumps because that's kind of a part of it. Of seeing which young guys can be a part of it and which one aren't, or which one cannot be a part. So that's also just all a part of the process. So, I mean, yeah, so they're not intentionally trying to lose. And they're very cognizant of the fact that, they want to put a product on the field that people want to come out and watch. So, they're not going to tell people, look, we're going to be dreadful, don't come out to the ballpark. They're in the business of making money. So they are trying to, at least field a competitive team, even if they're honest with themselves and look in the mirror and know they can't compete for a playoff spot. They are trying to, it's hard to say this after that May, but they really are trying to field a team that can be competitive. And, they were in April and they were not in May. There's still 4 months of baseball left. Odds are they're not going to be a very good team. They're probably going to finish with 90 or more losses. But yeah, I got to think that the product in the next 4 months can't be as bad as May. I mean, May was one of the worst months in the history of the franchise. Just the odds are that things are going to turn around, and I'm not saying turn around and that all of a sudden they're going to reel off a 15-game winning streak, but I got to think they'll be more competitive than they were in May.
Well, Ryan, how many of the people and the Phillies fans out there don't believe you think in what they're doing? Like they don't believe in the talent, because you sort of alluded to this with Embiid and many Sixers fans believing in Embiid and Simmons, but do you think the Phillies fans don't see that impact player?
Yeah, for sure. And especially when guys like Michael Franco and Vince Velasquez and the guys that you see every day are struggling on the big league field, I get it. But as I kind of alluded to, and I've been trying to tell people this when I see them. I just got my haircut. I told my barber it. Like, the Phillies are tough to watch. I get it. I understand it. But if you like baseball, if you like the Phillies, a nice thing to do to kind of take some of that stress off and maybe to have some hope, take the hour ride to Allentown, take the hour ride to Reading, take the hour ride to Lakewood. Almost all three of those places are within a decent, short enough drive for people throughout the Delaware Valley. And you can go see Moniak, you can go see Sixto Sanchez, you can go see Reese Hoskins and Scott Kingery and Dylan Cousins and on and on and on. You can't lose sight that those guys are a part of this too. So, and I'm not saying any of those guys are guaranteed to be successes, but the Phillies have built such depth in their minor league system that even if three of those guys become impact players, that's pretty good. And that's a workable core. And then when you hit the free agent market this winter and next winter, you can supplement it with proven stars. And then all of a sudden you really have something. I think so I get it. I get watching this team is really difficult. I get that you don't see anybody that you can point to and say, I could see this guy on the next championship team, but you can't lose sight that the organization is more than just the 25-man roster on the major leagues. You have to remember there are teams in Class A Clearwater and short season Williamsport and Lakewood and Reading and Allentown. So, and I'm not saying there's any saviors down there, but I think there's enough depth that there is some guys that you can kind of latch some hope to.
Ryan Lawrence covers the Phillies. With that, one of the problems I think with the Phillies and the fan base, I guess, is the whiff that they have had in the draft. Joe Savory, Anthony Hewitt, guys that have never even made it. Savory's the only one in 10 years or so Well, Noel is up now, but there haven't been very many first-round picks that have had any impact in this organization. So I guess with that background, it is hard for Phillies fans to say, well, if we're bad, the Cubs were bad, they got picks, they're playing. The Astros are bad, they got picks, they're playing. The Nationals are bad, they got picks, they're playing, and they're good. The Phillies have been bad, and they're not seeing any fruits of that bad labor.
Well, and again, comparing it to the NBA, the baseball draft is more than the first round. I mean,
sure.
I forget where they got Ken Giles, but Ken Giles they drafted. He was a legit guy that they were able to turn into some more prospects through a trade. There are other guys. I mean, I'm not ready to say that Aaron Nola is a bust. I think Aaron Nola is 23, 24. As long as he stays healthy, I think he could be a part of it. Major league pitchers are all going to go through growing pains at some point. I don't know. I mean, look, even though they're first-round picks, I understand Savory and Hewitt, and that was a previous administration too, the guys that running those drafts compared to the guys running these drafts. I mean, J.P. Crawford is, I think, still one of the youngest players in AAA. I'm not ready to say that he can't be an impact player. I know he's struggled for a large chunk of this season in AAA, but he's still really young, and I think that he's nowhere near done developing. So I don't know. I mean, I understand when you want to latch onto a first-round pick that you can say, okay, this guy's the savior, but I just don't think baseball always works that way. I mean, the Nationals are an interesting team because they really had back-to-back number one overall picks when there were franchise-defining players, available in Strasburg and Harper. But, you look at their roster and they have other guys that, weren't heralded number one picks or first-round picks and that have, are a part of their core. And that's every team. But, yeah, for sure, if you look at the Cubs and the Astros, they had a pretty good success rate. I mean, they were able to get guys like Chris Bryant and Carlos Correa. But even that, it's not, I'm sure if you looked at most major league teams over the last 10 drafts and their first rounds, you're going to see hits and misses. And just because of the inexact science of baseball, I think you're going to see a lot more misses. I love looking at old drafts. You go to baseballreference.com. It's really fun.
Yeah,
you can get lost on there. So, yeah, I mean, the Phillies did make some bad drafts back, with the Savories and Hewitt, but that was also a little while ago. So I more look at the picks that the current administration has made. Moniak, we don't know about Cornelius Randolph. I mean, that again, it's just almost the inexact science of drafting high school kids. You hope that they grow, and it's really you don't really want to judge who they are at age 19 because development is a real thing. They all need to kind of learn the game. I had an argument last night with somebody on Twitter who was trying to say that you have to call it Moniak now because, well, they didn't hold LeBron's hand. I'm like, wait a second, you can't make that comparison. Like LeBron was a freak. He was like Ken Griffey Jr. or like Bryce Harper. I'm sorry to break this to you, but that's not Mickey Moniak. He's a high school kid that is not a savior. He was the number one overall pick, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's a franchise-defining talent. I mean, some of those guys just come along once. Whatever, every 10, 15, 20 years. So with baseball, it really just takes, and it gets back to the whole Sixers versus Phillies rebuild thing. With baseball, it just takes a heck of a lot more patience. And, you really can't pin your hopes on a draft pick because, you're not sure where that guy's going to be 4 or 5 years down the road.
Check out the full article. PhillyVoice.com is where Ryan has it. It's a really good piece, a lot of different perspectives. Ryan Lawrence 21 on Twitter is you can get the link.
I have
to
it right now pinned on my. If you just go right to my Twitter, I have that. I think I have that story pinned, so it's right at the top of my Twitter, Ryan Lawrence 21.
You would like this, Ryan. We played golf yesterday with the assistant women's golf coach at Clemson. How about that?
Whoa, yeah, that's crazy. What was she doing up here?
The LPGA's in town. We played in the Pro-Am yesterday, and she was our pro.
Yeah.
And she had her Clemson shirt on, and I mentioned you, and a couple I said, a couple of guys I know.
My niece goes down there. It's not as cool as getting a picture by the Phillies dugout with Dabo, but, it's pretty cool.
Dabo, yeah. Meeting Dabo was awesome. Yeah, I'm wearing my Clemson. Well, of course I am, but I'm not a front runner either. I've been wearing Clemson stuff since I went there. But, I'm wearing a Clemson shirt right now. And I do also appreciate you saying Clemson the right way because we don't like it when people mispronounce it.
I'll try not to, but how do you mispronounce it?
I was going to ask you.
No, I don't know how you
say it with a Z.
Oh, Clemson.
If you say it with a Z, a lot of broadcasters will do that. Like if you're watching the ESPN game and You're like, oh my God, I got to turn the sound down. This guy's going to irritate me the entire game. But yeah, the way we say it is you're supposed to say it with an imaginary P in there, and you do say it the right way. So Clemson. Yeah.
Very good. Our next conversation, Ryan, will be when will the Phillies start bringing up some of these young guys? I'm all down that road, right?
Right. Yep, for sure. And I'd be happy to have that conversation with you.
All right, pal. We'll catch up soon.
All right. Have a good one, guys.